Hello everyone, and welcome back for the final time to my Morro Bay Speedway. I've got Nemo with me once again, and today I'm going to finish this toy box. The first thing I want to set up are the super cannons on the last shortcut over here. Now, my original idea was to use the super cannons to create something like the East Australian Current from the Finding Nemo movie. I thought it'd be really cool to have the cars look like they're swimming through the ocean at a high rate of speed. So I did some experimenting. Let me show you some of the test footage from my initial experiments with the super cannons. Here I've set up a simple loop with a ramp so I can place some super cannons up in the air for the cars to ride. When I started placing the cannons, I couldn't get them to sit right next to each other, so I placed them as close together as I could, and then I tried it out. As you can see, the super cannons do work with the AI cars. They will launch the AI cars just like they will the player's car. But as you can also see, it doesn't work consistently. Sometimes an AI car will find the gap between the super cannons and miss them altogether. I tried spacing the cannons further apart and using the replayer to fill in the gaps, but when I play back the replayer, it won't put them in. It tries, but I guess the space is too tight, so it takes them back out. Because I couldn't get it to work reliably, I decided to scrap my East Australian Current idea and only use the super cannon to create a shortcut for the players. However, I've since gone back and done some more experimenting, and I found that if I add a little piece of racetrack at the top of the ramp, and I stagger the super cannons in a formation like this, then it works pretty well. I have yet to see an AI car miss the super cannons in this formation. So I'm thinking about producing one more racetrack for this series to see what else I can do with these cannons. Another option might be to connect the super cannons to a path, but of course that only works in 3.0. Oh, and in case you're wondering why I didn't just use the fans to keep the cars in the air, the problem I ran into with the fans was that the longer the cars are in the air, the more they lose their momentum. But I did utilize the fans in another racetrack, which you'll get to see next week. But for today, let's use the super cannons to set up a neat shortcut for the players. And I say shortcut, but it's actually a longer path than the main path. So if you'll notice, there's actually more distance that the player has to traverse. The super cannons and the boost pads, though, make it a little faster for the player than the main path, but you have to drive it perfectly in order to take advantage of that. So there is a little bit of a risk taking this path. Alright, so to place the super cannons, we want to make sure the arrow is pointing that way. We want to line this up with the inside of this passage, the center of it. And I'm going to put the right edge of the super cannon on the block just like that. And you'll notice when I place it, there's a little red star that's floating out here. And I want to place that right next to the entrance to the next super cannon. That's the aim point for the cannon that I dropped down first. And so I want that aim point to be right at the entrance for this cannon. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look at the sand, you can kind of see it there. So we'll drop that one, and that puts the aim point for the next one out next to that little leafy plant. So this one needs to sit right there. And then the final aim point is right here, which is right on the path that we need for the shortcut. Alright, so that will launch them this way, and then the player needs to traverse this turn. And then we'll put down a couple of boost pads over here. And this will help launch the player out into the track below towards the finish line. And you'll notice it's not letting me place them right up next to these, so I need to change the style of these temporarily. Just so that I can reduce that bounding box so that I can place those boost pads. So we'll put them right here, about a half a block from the edge of the cliff. Then we can go ahead and put these back. kind of goofy that it doesn't let you do that. Because, I mean, it lets them sit in there, but oh well. Alright, so that is the third shortcut. And I skipped the second one, so let's go over and do that one next. And that shortcut is right over here. Right after you come off the big jump and you land over here. So for this one, it's a pretty easy and obvious shortcut because you can see it. And even though there's no track there, you're kind of tempted to just drive through there and see what happens, especially if you know the track. So we need to add a little bit of challenge to this, and to do that, I'm going to add some barnacles to block the entrance. That'll disguise the path a bit, and also add some challenge because the player will have to crash through the barnacles or jump over them to enter the shortcut. But because the barnacles can be destroyed, we need to put them down with a replayer so that if we want to race this multiple times, we can put those barnacles back. So to save a little bit of time, I've already dropped a replayer over here. And I'll open up the properties for that. Set the playback interval to 0. And just to make sure we can get to these, I dropped one earlier. This is just temporary, but I'll pick it up and put it down, and that gets us back to the Gameplay Toys drawer to the barnacles. There's this barnacle cluster, there's the muscle cluster, and you need the Finding Dory playset to unlock these. So now we can go ahead and step on our replayer, or in Nemo's case, swim onto our replayer to get that little menu in the lower right. And then on my Wii U, I press B to start recording. I swim off so I can get back into the editor. And we've got our little muscle cluster. We'll go ahead and come over to the entrance of this. And I'm going to set the first one up, I believe, right here. Let me pull up my screen grab to make sure I've got this correct. Yeah. So we'll set the first one like this. The next one we'll put up here like that, directly diagonal from it, and I'll rotate it so it's not so repetitive. And we've got enough memory. Let's go ahead and mix it up and put a barnacle cluster in over here. And then I'll exit out of the editor. We'll come back and swim onto our replayer. I press B again to stop recording, and that should be sufficient. So there are our barnacles. And so as you come off of the jump and onto the racetrack and you're looking down this way, you can see that kind of blocks the view a little bit. But if you know it's there, you can try to jump over it or crash through those and bypass this whole path that's up here. Alright, so that is the second shortcut. Now, of course, we need to reset this for the next lap after we play in case those barnacles are destroyed. So we'll come over to our reset button. And we're going to do two things with this. First, we'll do a new logic connection when pressed. And we'll come over to our replayer and clear it. And then we need to give the replayer a little bit of time to do its work. So we're going to make use of that time delayer that we put down last time. So a new logic connection on the button when pressed. Come over to our time delayer. Whoops. Excuse me, I already did that last time. We already have that connection because we were using that to turn off the weather vane. So on the time delayer then, a new logic connection when the delay is completed, in addition to turning off the weather vane, we'll come over to our replayer and do a playback. And that'll put the barnacles back. I was thinking barnacles, so it made me come over here instead of the replayer. And now we're done with this, so we can go ahead and remove that. Alright, so now we're done with the second path. Okay, the last thing we have to do are to put in the vehicle weapon generators and the boost pads. So as we travel out this direction from the starting line, and we go around the corner, around the reef, and we come in over here, we're going to put down our first vehicle weapon generators right up here on this racetrack seam. So we'll come up to the Creativitoys drawer, and we'll go ahead and drop right on that seam. We'll put down 3 of them. And once again, you have to go into the properties to turn these on. Just placing them in your world doesn't do anything. Whoops, not that. Okay, I think that was 10. My thumb hit the wrong button. Yeah. Alright, now I want you to see where I place these, because they're right after the shortcut to bypass the mines. So that's the trade-off for the player. They can avoid the other cars picking up these weapons and the mines if they take the higher road, but in taking the higher road they miss out on the weapons. So that's part of the trade-off. But it is an easier path to go, a little less risky, perhaps not as fun, but... Alright, so the next feature, as we come around, the track is over here at the jump. And once again, we want to put down some boost pads here for the player, so they can get some big air when they take that jump. And once again, you're going to see we're going to hit this plant. So we need to come in here and just change this temporarily. And then we can put the boost pads in. There we go. So the players at least can get some big air. The other cars are just going to drive off the edge and they'll clear it, but just barely. But for the players, it's kind of fun to do that. I kind of wish the AI cars would use the boost pads, but what are you going to do? Alright, so the next feature then is right over here at the end of the shortcut, the second shortcut. And we want to put in some weapon generators here. And again, for those who want to cheat and take the shortcut, I want to deny them the weapons. So we're going to tuck these back in here, kind of out of sight, so they're not even visible from the player's perspective if they take the shortcut. And that way any of the cars that are behind them can hopefully pick up a weapon that gives them an opportunity to stop the player that got out ahead of them. So it's all about game balance. This will help players that use the shortcut and get into the lead. That the cars behind them have a chance to stop them. It also helps players that are behind and someone else takes the shortcut, so they have an option or an opportunity to try to slow them down. And then around the path, let's see, the next and last feature are some weapon generators here in this cave. And once again, this is kind of a balance thing. So we're going to put it right on this terrain seam, or this track seam, to kind of hide it a little bit. But the idea here is if the players take the shortcut through the whale's mouth, they'll miss these weapon generators. And cars that are behind have an opportunity to stop them before they reach the finish line. So there's lots of risk rewards. Some players may not want to risk the shortcut and just pick up the weapon and hope to stop them when they come out of the the path here. But of course you might get a something that won't help you to stop them. Instead of a missile or guns, you might end up with an oil slick or something that can't reach them. And with that, the Morro Bay Speedway is done. Next week we'll travel into cyberspace with Sam Flynn for the Game Grid Circuit, the next course in the chase for my Toy Box Racing Cup. So be sure to come back next Friday for that, or better yet, subscribe to my channel by clicking my photo in the lower right corner. Also, leave a comment before you go to let me know which of my racetracks you like best so far. I'd love to hear from you. Have a great weekend.